All right, so what are we talking about today?
All right, so we have the Repeat Max. This is a Beetleweight drive motor and gearbox. It has a 6 millimeter shaft on it and a planetary gearbox with a brushless outrunner motor on it.
Cool. And so can this be used for direct and indirect drive, or what does everybody use it for typically?
Yeah, there's a lot of people that run these as direct drive. With the 6 millimeter shaft, allows you to do that quite well. It'll withstand quite a few hits within the weight class. We ran a couple of these on some prototypes a few competitions ago, and out of 9 fights, I think we replaced 1 shaft.
So we can actually replace these shafts.
Yeah. So they actually have got one right here. So here's a replacement kit for the shafts. So what it includes is the hardened shaft and carrier plate, which is all one unit in this, as well as the circlip to retain it within on the bearings. So that actually kind of brings up a cool point on these two. The shaft in these is one piece. With the shaft and the carrier plate are one piece. In some other gearboxes, they're not. They're press fitted in, or they're screwed in, or retained with some sort of circlip. But in these ones, it's all one solid piece by design.
Yeah. So what's the case usage for it to be a single unit versus multiple parts?
Yeah, so in this case, what it helps with is it helps keep the wheel on if you get a hard sideways impact. So some bots are hitting hard enough as well where they're actually pulling out the shafts themselves. Or if someone gives you a little bit of help with, let's say, like an undercutter or a vertical spinner, if they get a good pull on your wheel, sometimes they can pull the carrier plate straight off with the axle, and you're left with a giant gaping hole in the side of your robot where your wheel used to be. With these, you kind of circumvent that, and you're able to get a lot more mileage out of it. And then with being able to replace them for relatively cheap versus replacing an entire gearbox.
And so that was actually going to be my next question. If in other gearboxes, if the shaft gets pulled out, the entire thing needs to be replaced, the entire motor, everything.
In some cases, some gearboxes are set up in a way where they can't be pulled apart like that, and once they do, they're basically shot. In most cases, a lot of vendors will have additional motors, and Pete does as well with these. You can get just the individual motor, you can get the gearbox, and you can get the shaft independently in this case.
Okay, and so what do we connect this motor to? What ESC?
Yeah, so you can kind of bring your own ESC to the party, but the ones that we've generally been running with are the Repeat Robotics Drive ESC. The firmware is already flashed on these to be able to handle bidirectional, which allows you to go forward and backwards. Whereas a lot of ESCs, when you first get them, will need to be reprogrammed to be able to handle that. I believe he's also tuned these specifically to this motor, so it's a nice off the shelf package.
And so how do we connect the motor to the ESC itself?
Yeah, so you can either directly solder the lines to the pads here, or you can actually put in, like, let's say, like a 2 millimeter bullet connector to be able to pull them apart during a competition. So I actually have one that has bullet connectors right here. So these are just 2 millimeter diameter bullet connectors, and pretty simple to solder in place. They have a mating female side, and they just plug in. You probably want to wrap them with some tape just to ensure that they don't come apart during combat, but they're pretty reliable.
Okay. And then I also see that we have a mounting plate on that motor.
Yeah, so this style of gearbox is actually pretty common. There's a lot of different brands that carry this exact mounting plate, essentially. So this is actually the FingerTech Robotics Mega Spark mounting plate on the Repeat Max gearbox. Pete also sells his own plates for these that are made out of carbon fiber. They have a 4-bolt pattern just like this on the inside, and then they have 2-bolt pattern on the outside. They're made out of carbon fiber.
And using carbon fiber and changing that hole pattern for the mounting really lightens up the weight.
Yes, they're substantially lighter.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the Repeat Robotics Repeat Max Brushless Drive.